Today we are going to discuss the first component of the central nervous system, that is spinal cord. As we have discussed in the previous class, the entire nervous system develops from the three main things here. Number one is this, that is called the neural tube, and number two is the pair of neural crest cells which are standing on two sides of the neural tube here. This is a column of neural crest cells. As far as the neural tube is concerned, this constitutes are the things which derive from this is the central nervous system's two major components. In the upper portion or the cephalic portion, three brain vesicles, they will give rise to brain. You see it is brain. Forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain from three vesicles respectively from above downward, and the rest of the part of central nervous system, that is called the spinal cord, will be derived from the remaining half of the neural tube that you are actually watching, and both are continuous with each other. Reason, because they develop from the same neural tube. On either side of this neural tube is lying the two neural crest cells columns. So that means on the two sides of the brain the same neural crest cells columns are situated, and in continuity with this, in the lower portion of the neural tube, that is the spinal cord, these are the same neural tube, I say neural crest, two columns are standing on two sides, and we will discuss later what the neural crest cells and what will be the contribution of neural crest cells in the nervous system development. But at least this is quite clear that where the brain finishes, the spinal cord starts. Means your spinal cord starts at where the brain's last component, that is the medulla oblongata, it finishes. Means spinal cord starts at the spinomedullary junction, and the spinomedullary junction incidentally happens at the upper border of the C1 vertebra, or you can say at the base of the skull, or you can say at the lower border of the foramen magnum. Spinomedullary junction, that means with the spinal cord begins at the spinomedullary junction at a site where first cervical nerve emerges, or you see at the base of the skull, at the lower border of the foramen magnum, or at spinomedullary junction it starts here, and it will travel through the vertebral canal. Vertebral canal, that is a canal within the vertebral column, and vertebral column means we have got 7 cervical vertebrae, and if you are actually looking at this picture, you see red color, 7 cervical vertebrae. We have got 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar and 5 sacral vertebrae. 5 sacral vertebrae fused together to form a single piece, that is called the sacrum, and then 1 coccyx you can consider. And this is actually a tube in which is lying this spinal cord, starting here from the upper part of the C1, and actually will go along the length of the vertebral canal. And vertebral canal, when the vertebrae are there, when the sacrum is there, we call it the sacral canal. They are continuous with each other, they are synonyms. But you see, this is actually the spinal cord, means it starts at the upper part of the C1, but you see where it should finish. Actually, spinal cord, when you are actually discussing the spinal cord, for example, you have got all vertebrae here, you say 7 cervical vertebrae, we have got 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar, and we have sacrum, and we have coccyx. Spinal cord starts from the upper part of the C1, and in the embryonic development actually it stops at the lower border of S2. This is the extent of the spinal cord as far as the embryonic development is concerned. During embryonic development, the spinal cord level or extent is upper border of the C1 until the lower border of S2, that is sacral 2. Means it is accommodated in 7, 12, 19, 5, 24 and 2 more. In 26 vertebrae it is actually accommodated in the vertebral canal, means most of it is accommodated in vertebral canal and some of it is accommodated in the sacral canal, but up to this level of S2, second cervical vertebra, say second sacral vertebra. This is the embryonic level, but you see that vertebral column, it is mesodermal in origin, spinal cord, it is neuroectodermal or ectodermal origin. Two different germ layers are there, so their growth is not at par with each other, it is not equal. The space of the growth is not equal. Mesodermal spinal cord, I say mesodermal vertebral column grows faster than the spinal cord. You see that it is up to S2 level. This is sacrum, you can consider it's like it is sacrum, and here is the lower border of vertebra, this is called lower border of the spinal cord. And you see vertebral column is also growing and the spinal cord is also growing. But the pace of the vertebral column is actually much faster than the spinal cord, and by the time the baby is born, you see the lower border of the spinal cord or the lower end of the spinal cord comes to lie at much higher level. Means it was actually, because they are growing, vertebral column is growing faster, you see it is growing faster. Initially the lower border will now come to lie at S1, now it is the L5, L4, then it is L3, and by that time the baby is born. Means almost at the upper border of L3, when the baby is born, the lower level or the termination of your spinal cord is at the lower border, I say at the lower border of L2 or the upper border of the L3. So you have got 3 levels very important here. One is the S2 level, this is the initial level during the embryonic development. Another will be L2 level, you see that is the lower border of L2, or you can say upper border of L3. This is the level when the baby is born, and this is the level of the spinal cord in the vertebral column. But you see this will not be the end now. Growth continues, and continues means vertebral column grows little more longer now, but not the spinal cord as such. You see, so the lower level of the spinal cord, which previously was at L2, now comes to lie finally at L1. Means it is the L1 vertebra where spinal cord will finally settle. So this is the adulthood level, you can say L1 level. So these 3 levels are important as far as the growth and the length of the spinal cord is present at the different ages here, different parts of the stages of the development. Embryonic development S2, and development at the time of birth is L2, but at the adulthood it will be L1. And these are 3 different levels of the spinal cord, and you are actually watching this spinal cord as such. Here in the vertebral column it is lying at the vertebral canal. Within its 3 membranes, delicate membranes, they called meninges. And when the meninges will be present here, you will see that the meninges are not just surrounding the spinal cord, but they will be surrounding the brain also, because brain and spinal cord, they are developing from the same neural tube. And if you are actually looking at this, so you will see that the first meninx that will be adherent to the surface of brain as well as the spinal cord, they will be in fact adherent to that. Adherent to that means it will be now touching the surface of the brain as well as the spinal cord. So you see it is the brain, and now it is touching the spinal cord, and it reaches up to the level of S2, because the original level, you see the beginning, you see the original level of spinal cord was S2, sacral 2. If it is a sacral 2, means this meninx, that is called the pia mater, the pia mater will be actually up to the S2 level. So it is surrounding the brain as well as the spinal cord. This is pia mater. If it is the pia mater, so next meninx, that is called the arachnoid mater, this is also up to the S2 level. And the space between, you see this space between the pia mater inside and the arachnoid mater outside, this potential space you call them subarachnoid space. And the subarachnoid space contains here a fluid that is called the cerebrospinal fluid, because this space is not present only around the spinal cord, not only around the brain, but around brain and spinal cord both. So this space is containing the fluid which will be surrounding the brain as well as the spinal cord. That's why we call them cerebrospinal fluid. So this cerebrospinal fluid is accommodated in the subarachnoid space. This is subarachnoid space which I am filling with the CSF. But the CSF is not formed here in the subarachnoid space. The CSF is formed in the ventricles. The CSF is formed in the central cavity of the brain, not the spinal cord. Those central cavity of the brain is the ventricle. This ventricle, this is the duct, then this is ventricle, few more ventricles that we have discussed previously and we will discuss in the future also. But you see this is ventricle from where the cerebrospinal fluid is synthesized. But this synthesized fluid will finally drain into the subarachnoid space. We will tell you that how this comes. And this is the cerebrospinal fluid. So we have got the pia mater, then we have the subarachnoid space, and then we have the arachnoid mater until we reach at the surface, until we reach more externally, and this will be more closer here to the bone, in which the brain and the spinal cord both are accommodated. Now this third menax in fact will be touching the inner aspect of the bone now, and this will be called the dura mater. Where originally? You see that originally at the S2 level. Why S2? When the spinal cord comes to lie at the L1, originally you see the embryonic development in the beginning, the spinal cord was also at the lower level of the S2. So, all these meninges will be lying at the lower level of the S2. But you see this when you are actually bringing this spinal cord, you see this is here, but we have already told you that it is not just S2, S2 is not a final level of your spinal cord. S2 was not a final level, S2 was the level at the beginning, you see at the very early stage of the embryonic development. But by the time the baby is born, you see this lower level of the spinal cord has finally, you see that it is settled at the L2 level, at the lower part of the L2, which later comes to settle at the lower part of the L1. So, S2 was the original level, so all the meninges are lying at the S2 level, but you see that when the lower border of the spinal cord, as the lower end of the spinal cord comes to lie at the L2 level or L1 even. So, you see that it will be, spinal cord will actually be at the L2 level or L1 level. L1 means first lumbar vertebra or second lumbar vertebra. So, at the L1 vertebra in adulthood it comes to lie finally. When it comes to lie finally, that does not mean that the meninges will also actually go to the will drag themselves up to the L1 level. No, they will remain at the same at the S2 level. Only the meninges will not go to the L1 or L2. Meninges will remain at the S2. Only the spinal cord will actually get out of it. When the spinal cord will get out of it, you see the innermost sac that has been formed by the pia mater will become empty. You see here. So, this lower level which is at the S2, now I actually make this level up to L1 for example. This lower level is L1. So, you see this one that is actually called the pia, the sac of the pia mater, the sac of the pia mater will become now empty. This become empty. But because outside is lying the subarachnoid space, so the fluid in the subarachnoid space, the pressure in the fluid in the subarachnoid space will now compress the sac, empty sac of the pia mater from outside, and it collapses. When it collapses here, you see from L1 level, from the lower end of your spinal cord, this will not remain like a sac, but it will become like a membrane. So, you see that will actually be collapsing, it will be like a single membrane in fact will be actually hanging, starting here from the end of your spinal cord will go down up to S2 level, you can say. Initially think it like S2 level. So, you see this is what we call here, this is pial sac, this pia sac in fact will be from here. So, it will not remain like a sac, but it collapses. It is like a single thread like or membrane like thing that will actually be stretching it like from the end of your pia sac of the pia mater. And this is the vertical extension of pia mater basically. It is not like a sac, but collapses. After collapse, above it is a sac obviously surrounding the spinal cord as well as the brain. But down you know that it has collapsed because the spinal cord has cut out of it now and it is now empty. So, empty means it collapses due to the pressure of the fluid from outside. So, this will be actually a downward extension or vertical extension which will be stopped by this sac, which will be stopped here by the arachnoid, but it will penetrate the arachnoid. It penetrates the arachnoid and a few fibers of the arachnoid will also run along with this. So, there will be not a hole actually, not a perforation as such, because if there is perforation there is a leakage of the CS. And when this next layer will be this green color, that is called the dura mater, and dura mater will penetrate the dura mater and a few fibers of the dura mater will also run along with this. And now you can say this downward extension of the pia mater, which is taking some fibers of your next arachnoid as well as dura, it is actually coming down here. Initially it was purely pia mater and later on it is penetrating the arachnoid as well as dura. It is now coming here more thicker and thicker, it will cross S3, S4, S5 till it will get fused here with the posterior border of the coccyx. This downward extension more precisely or roughly you can say generally called as the downward pia mater extension, starting from the end of your spinal cord up to the posterior surface of coccyx, giving some stability here to the spinal cord, This is called phylum terminale. So, phylum terminale is an extension, it is a pyometer extension, vertical pyometer extension from the last, you see that from the terminal end of the spinal cord through the sacral canal, I say through the, obviously through the lumbar vertebrae or the vertebral canal in the lumbar vertebrae, then through the sacral canal, entire sacral canal until it will pass through the sacral hiatus and will come to fuse now with the posterior surface of the coccyx here, giving stability to the spinal cord. This is called the phylum terminale. But at the same time, you see that we do not have just phylum terminale here. You see the phylum terminale, and if you will actually trace the phylum terminale here, you can say pyometer is inside. This is the deepest layer. And here is the phylum terminale. So, this is the phylum terminale, and outside we have got arachnoid, and then we have the dura mater. So, we have this pyometer extension, but at the same time where the spinal cord, you know that the spinal cord which is lying here in the vertebral canal, the spinal cord here up to adulthood it occupies only 20 vertebrae. You see in 7 cervical, in 12 thoracic 19 and 1 lumbar 20. We have still 10 vertebrae, vertebral canal and sacral canal. Vertebral canal in the lumbar region and sacral canal, they are empty, they do not have spinal cord. They have obviously phylum terminale, they have meninges. So, that means if the meninges are there, so your pyometer collapses, but outside your subarachnoid space is available. Means your subarachnoid space is present up to S2 level. And your spinal cord finishes at the lower level of L1, means from L1 up to S2 level you do not have a spinal cord, but you have subarachnoid space, and this is the area from where you can recover some CSF also for the sampling, but obviously not from the sacrum, it will be from lumbar vertebrae, especially from the gap, or you see the gap between third and fourth or between second and third vertebra. So, you can see here because subarachnoid space is present there. And this is called the lumbar puncture, or you can call it the CSF, I say lumbar tap also. The lumbar tapping will be there, so from here the CSF is tapped also, because CSF is present and fortunately spinal cord is not present. And here we can actually use this spaces, this area we can use. But you see that stability is not just stability of your spinal cord is not just because of the phylum terminale, because it is holding it. But at the same time the pyometer vertical extension, it is not enough, we have lateral extensions of pyometer also. Lateral extensions of pyometer means we have pyometer lateral extensions from here, that means wherever spinal cord is present. So, you can say when the spinal cord is present here, outside we have got a arachnoid mater, second layer up to S2. And the last layer, you know that it is called the dura mater, which is now touching the inner aspects of the bone. Up to S2 level again. And here when you actually discuss here the pyometer, so pyometer it will giving bilaterally, it will give extensions here, similar extensions in such a way that it will give extensions like this. You can say if it is spinal cord here, you see if it is spinal cord is here, now up to L1 level. So, spinal cord is accommodated in 1 lumbar, 12 thoracic, 7 cervical, means in 20 vertebrae. So, that means if you are actually looking at the first time at the when spinal cord was lying within the first cervical vertebra, from both sides it will give the lateral extensions like ligaments, and these ligaments will now be, if this ligament is coming from lateral side here, it will be from lateral side, arachnoid mater will stop it, it will penetrate through, and outside when the dura mater comes, it will fuse with the dura mater. And when the one vertebra finishes, there is intervertebral foramen. So, there is a gap again, and after the gap another extension. This is one side I am showing you, on both sides it will be. So, it will be like this, so it will be from this side and from this side also. after a gap from this side and from this side, left and right. Then after the gap, it will be there and here. So do you see that why these are the gaps? Because these gaps will actually, these gaps to prevent and to avoid the blocking, sealing of the intervertebral foramen. So here this will be another foramen, another ligament, yet another ligament. These ligaments will first penetrate the arachnoid and then will get fixed with the durameter. That means they are stabilizing the spinal cord at a segmental level, you see that, at different levels, not segmental as such, but at different levels. And how many such extensions we see? These extensions, the number of these extensions, though they are bilateral obviously. So how many such pairs of extensions will be present? The number of extensions will be as many the numbers of the vertebrae in which spinal cord is accommodated, and the spinal cord is accommodated in 20 vertebrae. That is why there will be 20 pairs of such lateral extensions of pyometer. You call them ligamentum denticulatum. You see, this is a third for the third cervical, fourth for the fourth cervical, fifth for the fifth cervical, then the sixth, then the seventh. Likewise, it will be 12 for the thoracic, 12 thoracic. So these are the lateral extensions. I am showing you on one side only, but you see that they will be on both sides. So 20 on this side and such 20 will be on this side also. These are called ligamentum denticulatum. So you can say such a 20 from here, 20 from here means 40 such lateral extensions will be present, 20 pairs, and one will be the vertical. Where spinal cord itself is accommodated in 20 vertebrae, where spinal cord physically itself is present, 40 extensions in pieces, tooth-like projections, you can say, tooth-like extensions, you call them ligamentum denticulatum, dental ligaments, dental-like, tooth-like ligaments, means 20 teeth from this side, 20 teeth from this side. These are actually like here. So they are here for this 4, 4, 4, likewise it will be 20. So 20 pairs. When the spinal cord itself is present, lateral extensions, ligamentum denticulatum, they will stabilize them. When the spinal cord itself finishes, there is the vertical extension. This is the pyometer, means pyometer from all sides actually stabilizing the spinal cord within the vertebral canal. And surely you see again this, and then phylum terminal. So this is called ligamentum denticulatum. Two things here from extensions point of view, from stabilization point of view, and this is not just only stabilization. Basic stabilization are the more stabilizing factors, the attachment of the nerves, because you know that on the two sides of the spinal cord we have got 31 pairs of spinal nerves. 31 means on one side 31, one from other side is 31, means 62 nerves are actually holding the spinal cord. And I will tell you, this is not 62 nerves, each nerve has got the two roots, means it will be not 62, you can say they will be 122, but you will be surprised that each root is not root only, because root or posterior root, anterior root, then is the nerve, means one pair of nerve means it will be two pairs of roots, you can say, but each root is not a root only, each root at the time of attachment actually splits into the rootlets. And it will be 9 to 10 rootlets as far as the motor root is concerned, and 9 to 10 as far as sensory rootlets are concerned. Means one nerve through not two roots, but is actually holding the spinal cord on its own side through 20 rootlets. So you can say 20 rootlets from here, 20 rootlets from here. Just one segment of spinal cord is actually held from two sides by 20 rootlets. Means to 20 from here, 20 from here, 40 rootlets are holding one piece of a spinal cord or one segment of a spinal cord. And such 30 segments are present. So 30 into 40, it will be 1200. You see 1200 rootlets are holding the spinal cord. We will actually see this also. So this is something that you are actually watching here. This is the ligamentum denticulatum. Or you can simply say dental ligament, and this vertical extension, it was a pyometer. This is called phylum terminal. Both are pyometer. So these three levels again important, from where the spinal cord has actually formed. This is important. And what are the coverings which in fact the spinal cord is covered with? What are various spaces? But spaces as far as subarachnoid space is concerned, then between the arachnoid mater, you see between the arachnoid mater pyometer, it was subarachnoid space, but between arachnoid mater and pyometer there is the space that is called subdural space. But outside your durameter, between durameter and the inner aspect of the bone, that is the space that is called the extradural space. So we have got extradural space, and this is extradural space in which is contained here plexus of veins. This is called the internal vertebral plexus of veins. This is internal vertebral plexus of veins, which is draining the venous circulation of the spinal cord. And such things must be present in the cranial cavity also, between the dura mater and the cranium bone, that is the bone of the cranial cavity. So this must be present there also. But we know that here internal vertebral plexus of veins is present, but in case of cranial cavity, they are in form of sinuses. You call them meningeal sinuses, that we will discuss in cranial cavity. So this is here. But at the same time, outside vertebral canal, outside vertebral column even, we have got another vertebral plexus of veins also. This is called the external vertebral plexus of veins. And the external vertebral plexus of veins and internal vertebral plexus of veins is connected with each other by means of the veins. These are valveless veins. These veins are called imaginary veins. Valveless veins. Usually they do not have valves, but actually blood flows from higher pressure to lower pressure, because always inside is the pressure high. So usually blood flows from inside to outside, but sometimes it can be from outside to inside also, especially when there is obstruction or there is a intra-abdominal pressure, intrapelvic pressure. Sometimes in the malignant cells, sometimes go through these through the external vertebral plexus via imaginary veins and can involve the internal vertebral plexus of veins, leading here to secondaries within the vertebral column, and even they will go here to the cranium also. So secondaries of even prostatic carcinoma can involve even the skull bones. This is via this retrograde flow of the malignant cells through these imaginary veins, because of the abnormal increased intra-pelvic pressure. So it will go through these imaginary veins at the multiple sites we have got here. So the external vertebral plexus, internal vertebral plexus, certain areas you see that spaces, subdural, extradural, subarachnoid space, and at the same time CSF circulation, which you are actually watching. Ligamentum denticulatum, filum terminale, these are something related to the meninges of spinal cord. Same thing will actually come in brain also. And if you are actually discussing in this, and then when you will actually get the spinal cord out here, you see spinal cord itself. If you are looking at the spinal cord itself is attached with the 31 pairs of the spinal nerves, and each pair of spinal nerve will occupy some piece of spinal cord. Means each pair should have actually some area of the spinal cord, and this is called the segment of spinal cord. If for example this is one small piece of spinal cord, to its side is attached your two or say pair of first cervical nerve, you will call this piece of spinal cord as the first segment of spinal cord, though the spinal cord is physically is not segmented as such. But the attachment of the nerves will tell you that this piece of the spinal cord, this segment of the spinal cord is specified for the attachment of the first cervical nerve. You say first cervical segment, then the second, third, fourth, till the last it will be the last cervical, last segment of the spinal cord, that is called the coccygeal segment. So we have a 31 segments of spinal cord, and these 31 segments of spinal cord up to adulthood is occupied within 20 vertebrae. Means down in the lower 10 vertebrae they are empty. We do not have a spinal cord at least there. We have filum terminale, we have meninges, we have subarachnoid space to some extent, but we don't have a spinal cord. A spinal cord finishes, and when we spinal cord actually get outside here, 31 segments of spinal cord accommodated within 20 vertebrae, accommodated in a vertebral canal formed by 20 vertebrae up to L1, though we have vertebral canal below also, but spinal cord is not there. So when you are actually bringing this spinal cord out here, you see spinal cord will not abruptly finish here at the L1 level. It will not actually finish like this. So this is spinal cord finishes here. It's not actually like this. It finishes, you see, it terminates by getting narrower progressively, slowly and gradually it will narrows down. You see, it is tapering now. So lower tapering end of a spinal cord, it is called conus medullaris. Cone, you see, this is cone like. You see, it is like a cone. So this lower end is called cone. So you call them conus medullaris. So it is officially, the name of spinal cord is medulla spinalis. You can say spinal medulla. And that medulla which is actually famous, it is called the medulla oblongata. This is spinal medulla. So that's why this lower tapering end of spinal cord, which is cone like, that is called the conus medullaris, medullary cone. So you will not always, you see, when you will refer to this region, you will not always say that the lower end of the spinal cord, terminal end of the spinal cord, simply call them conus medullaris. And this conus medullaris you are actually watching, and how many segments from spinomedullary junction up to the conus medullaris? Obviously 31. And each segment means each segment is offering a pair of spinal nerves attachment. So 31 pairs of spinal nerves will be actually attached to the spinal cord here. And when you are actually discussing this, so you can say we have how many segments? You can say we have 8 cervical segments. We have 7 cervical vertebrae, but we have got 8 cervical segments, 8 cervical nerves. And out of these 8 cervical nerves, you can say 4 cervical nerves, means 4 segments. These 4 segments are related here to your head and neck. Through the plexuses, these are called the cervical plexus. Then the next 4 segments from, you can say from C5, C6, C7, C8. I say C8 means 8 means it will be from C5, then 6 and 7 and 8. 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 cervical segments with the induction or with the addition of thoracic one. This area is for your upper limb via brachial plexus. So you see 5, 6, 7, 8 C, that is my cervical 5, 6, 7, 8 and T1, they are called, these segments are called the segments for your brachial plexus, means they are innervating the upper limb. And right at this position, if you are looking at your spinal cord, the spinal cord in these segments only, these are those segments which are whose nerves are forming brachial plexus, the plexus for upper limb. And because the plexus for upper limb means the muscles and the sensory supply here is well elaborated here, skilled supply is there, skeletal muscles are actually need more neurons here. So these segments bilaterally are expanded here. So when you see in the upper 4 segments, it is narrow, cylindrical, but in the middle it will bulge. And bulge means which segments they are actually giving this bulging or thickening. These are the 5 segments. These are those segments which will form brachial plexus, limb plexus. Which segments? Means this bulging is called cervical enlargement. So this enlargement is called cervical enlargement. So you can say this is called cervical enlargement. After that, you see we have got T1, okay, but then with T2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Out of this, the upper 6 thoracic, they are have the nerves which are supplying your region of your thorax, and lower 6 thoracic nerves along with L1, means this is from T1 to T6 and this is from T7 to T12 along with L1, they are supplying your abdomen. But after L1, then you see L2, 3, 4, 5, then S1, S2 and S3. You will see again, these are the areas you know that whose nerves when they will emerge, they will form the lumbar as well as sacral. 2 plexuses, they are joined together through lumbosacral trunk, you say lumbosacral plexus. And this is the plexus whose branches are supplying the lower limb. And when it is the lower limb again, limb, more number of neurons are concerned, more number of neurons for sensory, more number of neurons for motor. So this part of a spinal cord related to these segments means from L2, 3, 4, 5, S1 to 3, this piece of a spinal cord is not cylindrical and narrow here, again it bulges. Abruptly it will bulge from both sides, again become spindle like, you see fusiform. So this symmetrical fusiform swelling or thickening is present here. This is another enlargement, more lying in the lumbar region, you see, that's why we call them lumbar enlargement. So we have got lumbar, we have got sacral enlargement, I say cervical enlargement. Cervical enlargement is from you see C5 up to T1, and this lumbar will be lumbar enlargement will be L2 up to S3. Means these are those segments whose nerves are forming the limb plexuses. So you can say that the spinal cord segments which whose nerves form limb plexuses, they are enlarged. They form cervical enlargement as well as lumbar enlargement according to the plexus. So, this is something, and the conus medullaris, these are the areas which you actually be looking at. These are certain important landmarks of the spinal cord which you are actually watching here. Now, if you are actually looking in this, not only here we are actually looking these things. So, again conus medullaris, lumbar enlargement and cervical enlargements, these three terms you should understand properly. Now, we are going to discuss here one more important thing to understand, that is spinal cord. When you are actually having a transverse section of the spinal cord, you will actually be looking at this picture, which will give you idea about how the spinal nerves are attached to the spinal cord and what will be actually the spinal cord's various important external and internal landmarks here. So, you see, if for example, you are having a transverse section, the spinal cord is not spherical, it is actually compressed from anterior posteriorly, it is like this. So, it will be this way, it is not spherical. So, it will be, you can say, compressed from anterior posteriorly, having a central canal in the center, and around the central canal we have got roughly H-shaped gray matter. An H-shaped gray matter, you already know that the gray matter has actually developed from the mental layer, neuroepithelial layer, as a neuroepithelium which has actually given rise to the neuroblast and the neurons, and it is having gathered around the central canal. You see it is gathered around the central canal, you call them the mental layer. And mental layer, due to the sulcus limitans appearing in the middle, you see this is here, will have the two areas now, the two plates here, the posteriorly, that is called the alar plate, this will be called the sensory plate or the sensory area, and the sensory area or the sensory plate of the mental or the gray matter sensory portion in fact expand to reach up to the surface and form here a horn like, we call them posterior horn. So, posterior horn is a sensory horn, you call them dorsal horn also. This is posterior to the level of sulcus limitan, though there is a sulcus limitan, it does not have any partition. You say in gray matter we do not have any partition, but we think that at the sulcus limitans level, you see behind that whatever neurons in fact will develop, they are all sensory neurons. And the next one, which is actually mental layer's anterior plate, that is called the basal plate, it will give rise here to the neurons which are the motor in activity. So, you call them the motor neurons. So, this is called the anterior horn. And posterior anterior horn on one side and the posterior anterior horn on other side, they are connected by means of a central portion of the gray matter, means this one. This piece is called central gray commissure. And in the central gray commissure, in the center of the central gray commissure is lying the central canal in which there is CSF. And this central canal is lined by ependyma. This is the last group of, so you say last population of cells developed from the neuroepithelium. After the neuroepithelium has given rise to 100 billion neurons, then neuroglia, the last thing will be the ependymal cells which are forming the epithelium of the central canal. So, this is something that you are actually watching, and if in the central canal is in the center of the gray commissure, so part of the gray commissure behind the central canal, it is called posterior gray commissure, and the part anteriorly it is called anterior gray commissure. And around this gray horns, you see that we have got this white area, you call them white columns. This is the marginal layer. If you remember, in early development we have seen this is marginal layer. This marginal layer does not contain the cell bodies, it contains the neurites, it contains the dendrites or axons of the cell bodies which are lying within the central nervous system, which are lying in the central gray matter. And in this area you have seen here, then you will see that this is now the marginal layer and this is the surface of your spinal cord. At the midline, anteriorly and posteriorly, this spinal cord actually has dipped inside here, you see this one, will not touch the anterior gray matter, after a gap returns back. So, fissure is created here, this is the fissure, In the anterior side, a fissure is there in the midline, that's why I call them anterior median fissure. Similarly, on the posterior side also, you see that it will come inside, return back, looks like there is a fissure again, but this time this is touching the posterior gray commissure. And when it is touching the posterior gray commissure, the two walls of the fissure, they will not remain fissure, they will touch each other, collapse, and there is no more gap. And you see it will be like this. This is called septum. This is called the posterior median septum. But on the surface, you will not say any fissure here. Here will be a sulcus appearing here. You see, this is called the posterior median sulcus. And when you are actually touching the surface of your spinal cord, you will say on this side posterior, but on the lateral side here we have another sulcus also. Here is a depression, but it will be throughout entire length of your spinal cord, so it will appear like a sulcus. In transverse section, in this section only it appears as a just depression is a sulcus. Yes, this is now sulcus. You call them posterior lateral sulcus. And posterior lateral sulcus is the spot here from where your posterior roots of the spinal nerves they are emerging. And similarly, when you are coming here, we have got this again, the sulcus again. The sulcus here is the depression, but throughout the sulcus here. This is the sulcus. You call them anterior lateral sulcus. And anterior lateral sulcus is the spot where from your anterior roots, you can say motor roots of the spinal nerve, they actually come out. And the motor roots of the spinal nerves, they are actually coming out here. And posteriorly, from posterior lateral sulcus, the sensory roots they come out and both will join together to form the mixed nerve. But where? When they will approach the intervertebral foramen. Motor and sensory roots always join together to form a common nerve only at the intervertebral foramen. During its passage within the vertebral canal, the roots do not mix with each other. Only they mix and will join and fuse together to form a mixed nerve at the intervertebral foramen. So outside intervertebral foramen, it is always the mixed nerve that comes out. So this is something that you are watching. Now, for example, if you are looking at this on the posterior side, when the horns are touching now, you see when the horns are touching the surface, you see your white matter will be divided into columns. And white matter divided into columns, that means we have got here a posterior white column, we have got lateral white column, we have got anterior white column. As far as your posterior white columns of two sides are concerned, they are totally partitioned, you see, totally divided into the two sides, and no fiber from one side can cross the other side, because there is a septum that is called the posterior median septum, which is represented here, you see, which is marked by the posterior median sulcus. This is called the posterior median septum. Two lateral white columns are there, they are on two sides here. But we have got two anterior white columns also, because the anterior median fissure has gone inside, is not touching the anterior as a anterior gray commissure, so there is a gap. Gap of white matter is there. This is gap of white matter. This is called anterior white commissure. So that means white column of one side and white column of other side. Anterior white column of one side, anterior white column of other side. Their fibers can easily cross. They can decussate. They can cross from one side to other side, and from left to right and right to left they can go, but not from the back side. Posterior white column fibers will never cross, but the anterior white column fibers can easily cross, because there is the anterior white commissure here, because the fissure, anterior median fissure, doesn't touch the anterior gray commissure. That's why this is called anterior white commissure. We don't have posterior white commissure. This is called the anterior white commissure. And this you already know, this is central gray commissure, central canal, so posterior gray commissure, anterior gray commissure. This is anterior white commissure where the fibers can cross. This is something that you are watching the inner or the internal morphology. But you see that when the one segment of spinal cord is there, for example, roughly if the spinal cord is 30 inches and we have 30 segments of a spinal cord, we have 30 segments, we have got the 30 pairs of spinal nerves emerging, means at least roughly one pair of spinal nerves should occupy at least 1 inch of spinal cord. means 1 inch of spinal cord means one segment of spinal cord roughly. And this 1 inch of spinal cord should have one pair of spinal nerves, and one pair of spinal nerve, each pair you know that of spinal mixed nerve when reaches the intervertebral foramen, from here onward there are two roots. When these two roots will actually attach with the spinal cord, one will attach with the posterior lateral sulcus, another will attach with the anterior lateral sulcus, but when they will attach to the spinal cord they will occupy only one point here, but we have got full inch now. We have got the full 1 inch length of spinal cord, so one root is not enough. Means by the time the root comes closer here to the spinal cord, each root now, each sensory root of each nerve and a motor root of each nerve, you see they will split into rootlets, so that they will spread here, they have multiple roots, means how many? Sensory 9 to 10 and motor maybe 11 to 12 rootlets will be there. So you can say rootlets will be there. Means spinal nerves are attached to the spinal cord not via simply roots but via rootlets. You can roughly say anterior root, posterior root, but they are anterior rootlets and posterior rootlets. And when another segment comes, another rootlets will come. When yet another rootlets will come, means 10 here, 10 here, 10 here, 10, means there will be actually, if there are 30 nerves, so each will have actually 10 rootlets each. So we have got anterior rootlets will be 300. And similarly posterior rootlets will be 300, means on one side all the nerves will have 600 rootlets, and similarly 600 rootlets on other side also. So spinal cord is stabilized by the attachment of 1200 rootlets, and in addition to that filum terminale and ligamentum denticulatum. And even if as if it is not enough, nature has given it actually a watery cushion from outside also, that is cerebrospinal fluid. So spinal cord is pretty protected here, and you see it will be actually be protected, and it will avoid even jolting here because of this stabilization. So see, this is actually something in the extra area, I say external and internal morphology, which you are watching. In this, especially the gray matter, in which we have to actually see this gray matter is the motor and this is sensory. The sensory and this motor. The motor should have again two functions. We have already told you, voluntary, involuntary. Means voluntary, involuntary, it is motor. We will use anterior horn, but anterior horn should be divided into two portions. One where the neurons for involuntary functions they will be located, and another where the voluntary neurons should be located, but it should be anterior horn because motor, we have just two horns, motor horn, sensory horn. And similarly on the sensory also, we should have those sensory modalities are the sensory impulses which come from surface, somatic area, and which will come from viscera, is called visceral area. Again we need actually the two areas within the posterior horn. Sensory area, I say somatic area and visceral area. And here voluntary area, involuntary area. Here voluntary is called again somatic and involuntary is called visceral. So you can say each horn should be divided into somatic area, visceral area, somatic area, visceral area, visceral efferent, somatic efferent, visceral efferent, somatic efferent. So we don't have just mental layer, we have sensory and motor plates. We just don't have sensory and motor plate. In motor we have got somatic and visceral zones. In sensory we have got visceral and sensory zones here. I say visceral and somatic zones here. So we will actually discuss in this also. We will see that what functions they are performing. So this is the attachment of the nerves in form of rootlets. Now we have told you here again that spinal cord is having 31 segments, and the spinal cord itself is accommodated in 20 vertebrae. Means 31 segments are there, roughly say 30, and we have got 20 vertebrae in which accommodated is in which spinal cord is living, because after L2, 3, 4, 5, S1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and coccyx, spinal cord is not there. And here this is the area, means all 31 segments are here and all 31 nerves attachment is in this area. Attachment of your 30 nerves in the spinal cord is only in a zone where spinal cord itself is living, in 20 vertebrae, means attachment is there. And where this spinal cord is present, on two sides of spinal cord we have got only 20 pairs of intervertebral foramina. Because we have got 20 vertebrae, so we have roughly 20 vertebral intervertebral foramina. So only 20 nerves can go outside here. The 10 nerves will be not allowed to go outside, because on two sides of spinal cord we don't have any intervertebral foramen, because spinal cord finishes at the L1, but below we have also intervertebral foramina, though spinal cord is not there. But foramina are there. Why don't you use these foramina? Use them. You will just ignore that the spinal cord is not there. We are spinal nerve and the spinal cord is not there. So how we can go outside? Doors are there. Go outside. But difference only is there. When the spinal cord is present and nerves are attached, their intervertebral foramina are not too far away. But when the spinal cord finishes, the lowest nerves, they have to travel a long way. The initial nerves not too long, but the later nerves too long away. You see that. How they will be actually running down here? They will run and will occupy now that already empty vertebral canal, where there was only the meninges and yes, obviously phylum terminal, etc. So they will travel through that empty vertebral canal. Which nerves? The lower nerves. So you can say these nerves are in such a way. So you can say here vertebral levels. Vertebral levels are how many? Roughly you say 31. And spinal segments are vertebral levels are how many in which spinal cord? 20. And the spinal segment they are 31. So spinal segments numerically they don't correspond with the spinal don't correspond with the vertebral column. Because here you will see that they don't correspond. Why? Because initially you can say cervical segment of spinal cord is lying within cervical vertebra. True. There is the remaining cervical spinal segments lying within vertebra, cervical vertebra. This is true. But by the time you will come down here, you see the conus medullaris, where there is a sacral segments. The sacral segments you see spinal cord is lying at the L1. Means numerically it doesn't correspond. If this last nerve is the last segment is the coccygeal, but coccyx is so down here, so low down here. This coccyx here, where the coccygeal segment is here. Little above we have got the sacrum 5, but the sacral 5 vertebra, the sacral 5 foramen is here. Means they do not numerically correspond with each other. And for this purpose, you have to actually remember this very simple formula in which you say vertebral levels. First of all, you say vertebral levels means initially you consider cervical region. All cervical vertebra. All cervical vertebra means all cervical vertebrae. In these all cervical vertebrae will be all cervical nerves plus 1. You say, sir, what this plus 1 means? Actually, all cervical vertebrae we have a total cervical vertebrae are 7, means from C1 to C7. And here in these 7 cervical vertebrae, these red color which we have actually shown you, red 7 cervical vertebrae. So we have got this one, you say C1, we have C7. In this C7, we have this all cervical nerves. Plus 1 means how many nerves should actually be present in 7 cervical vertebrae? All cervical nerves, because we have not 7 cervical nerves, we have got 7 and we have got 8th also. So we have C1 to C8. All 8 cervical nerves plus 1 means it is T1 also. This plus 1 doesn't mean that we have got 8th also. That's why they are 8. It is plus is for 8, say 8 cervical. No. All cervical nerves by default they are present. T1 is something that we have additionally given. That is called the T1. Means in this area, especially when you are actually discussing, means in 7 cervical vertebrae we have all 8 segments of spinal cord, cervical segments plus T1 also. So this is T1 is present here also, and we have got 8 cervical segments present here. So we have 8 cervical segments, means we have got here C1, we have got here C8, and then we have T1. And all these segments are lying within your 7 cervical vertebra. 7 cervical means vertebral canal within 7 cervical vertebra. After that, means when now the nerves are emerging. So you see here then all cervical nerves. Now we have got thoracic vertebrae. Thoracic vertebrae we have 12, but divide them into half. Means we say it is from T1 vertebra to T6 vertebra. Here you will say T1 to T6, but here you will say plus 2. What does this mean? This means when 6 thoracic vertebra comes, means we are starting here from T1, this is 2, this is 3, 4, 5 and 6. When T6 vertebra comes here. In this level, the segment of spinal cord will be +2, means it should be T8. If this is T8, that means within the thoracic vertebrae, which segment should start? Because T1 has been already given to the cervical, so you start from T2, T3, T4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. So that means you are starting from T1, it is now 2, this 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. We have got 8 here. So that means here will be T2 to T8. Bring now more. We have 6 more. Out of the 6, divide them half off. Means you divide them into T7, 8 and 9. Here +3. What does this +3 mean? Means when we are reaching our 9th thoracic vertebra, you see it was 6th, 7th, 8th and 9th. Means when you reach up to the 9th thoracic vertebra, we have a 9 plus 3, we have got actually 10th thoracic. I say 9 plus 3 is 12, means we have got 12th thoracic segment here. Means here will be our 12th thoracic segment. So you can say we have got 12th thoracic segment. How many above? 4 more. 8 already we have done. So it is 9, 10, 11 and 12. Means all 12 thoracic nerve have finished, but we are still present at 9 thoracic vertebra. Means still 3 thoracic vertebra still has been spared to accommodate other segments. And we have already finished 12 thoracic vertebrae. I said 12 thoracic segment. 12 thoracic segment finished, but still 9 thoracic vertebra has come. And when you are actually discussing here in this area, you will see how many now more. If you are actually discussing in this, you see how many more thoracics are remaining? 3. So you say T10, T11 and T12. It's just this? No, we have got L1 also. Separate them. All 3 thoracics will accommodate all 5 remaining lumbars, and just 1 lumbar will accommodate all others. So see if it is a 5 lumbar here, so you can say it's a 5 lumbar, T10, L1 and L2, T11, L3, L4, T12, L5. What about L1? L1 will have all, S1 to S5 and coccygeal also. This is something that you are actually watching. That means if for example you are looking at your C1 nerve, C1 segments nerve means C1 nerve, it emerges, you see that it emerges from the upper border of C1. C2 nerve, upper border of C2 vertebra, means intervertebral foramen between C1 and C2. You say upper border of C2. C3, upper border of C3. C4, upper border of C4. C5, upper border of C5. C6, upper border of C6. C7, upper border of C7. But what about C8 nerve? C8 from lower border of the C7. Why lower border of C7? Because we have C8 nerve, but we don't have C8 vertebra. And after that, T1, now everything is from the lower border of their corresponding vertebrae. T1, lower border of T1. T2, lower border of T2. T3, lower border. T4, lower. T5, lower. T6, lower. T7, lower. T8 also lower. T9, lower. T10, T11, T12. Then you see the lumbar at the lower border of lumbar 1, lower border of number 2, lower border of number 3, lower border of number 4, lower border of number 5. And then sacral, lower border of number sacral 1, sacral 2, sacral 3, sacral 4, sacral 5, coccygeal. Now see this emergence of your nerves. The upper nerves more horizontal, the middle oblique, and the lowest one you see that. Lowest one means whose attachment and they are exiting foramen is away. Such nerves, especially the lower 10 nerves, in fact their shape will be in such a way that means the nerves which will emerge from the conus medullaris area, they have their attachment here but intervertebral foramina away. So they will run within the vertebral canal and will actually be running like this. Bunch on this side and a bunch on the other side also. How many such nerves are doing this pattern, vertical pattern? You see lower 10. Lower 10 on one side, lower 10 on the other side means 20. Each nerve has got the sensory motor root on the other side also, so you say 40. So we have got 40 nerve roots in fact which are making here a bunch. 40 nerve roots bunch is there, and in the center is running your phylum terminal. And if you see this a bunch of the 40 nerves are there, 40 nerve roots are there. Initially 40 nerve roots bunch will be thicker, but once we will actually be going past the one pair of intervertebral foramen, this 40 roots will be now 36. Why? Because 4 will be short, because 4 already have given the pair of your spinal nerves. Then will be 36. Now coming down here 32, more coming down 28, 24, likewise. When you reach it down, you see only 4 roots will be there, and when reaching the last foramen, the 4 roots will also form a pair of spinal nerves here. So this last one, you see this last 10 nerves, these 40 nerves roots bunch in which there is a phylum terminal also. This is called cauda equina. Cauda means tail, equina means horse. You see, phylum terminal, I say conus medullaris itself is a mass, but from this mass is attached here a bunch of the fibers here, just like the tail of the horse. This is called the cauda equina. So that means if below L1 level there is any injury, you see these nerves, though spinal cord is not affected, but your spinal nerves will be affected. And these are those nerves which are going to the lower limbs, and these are those nerves which are carrying the parasympathetic fibers to your spinal, to your urinary bladder and the rectum, etc. also. So your defecation and urination, as the defecation and micturition reflexes will also be affected. So this is something that we are actually watching in the external morphology of the spinal cord here. Now in the next discussion, we will be discussing the internal morphology, and we will be focusing on our gray matter, the sensory and the motor gray matter. This was today's class.